Not commenting on that. Hello, DevOps friends. Welcome to Full Stack Live. Man, it feels like it was not even a day since I last... Oh, yeah, wait. Okay, yeah. So this is a streaming series this week. If I manage to do it, it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Not bad. However, I'll also have to admit that the next 2 weeks there won't be any streams because I'll be spending time in Germany with my own, with my family, my kids and my extended family. And this time I'm not going to lug my streaming gear around and set up my mobile studio. So you will have to do without me for 2 weeks. I might pop into a few other streams though, So we might still be in touch, but I won't be streaming. And of course, there's always Discord. You can always get in touch via Discord as well. And in order to get that stuff on screen, I forgot to enable my chats. Where's the chats? So here we go. You go here. And then you go here. Yes, of course I got that. My 11-year-old is a great Pokemon fan. So yeah, I was aware of where my reference came from. Okay, now we have chat working. Great. So yeah, how is everyone? How are you, Balthazar? Hope you had a great start to your day and not as much of a debacle as lately. I did actually sleep quite well, and that might actually have been due to the cause that I went to bed a little bit earlier than usual. And you woke up an hour ago. That doesn't sound too bad. No, getting up early because your head started spinning early. Yeah, so I slept quite well, dreamt wild stuff. That's also quite unusual for me, and that means I did sleep pretty deeply. So yeah, I feel quite rested, and Rep Sexy, hey, welcome back. Welcome to the stack, that's great. Yeah, I remember you've been in Daniel Rose chat. Updates on your collaboration with Level 1 Tech. Out with it. How's your day going, Grab Sexy? Hope you're doing great. I am not sure if I have much more to say about hard links, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Maybe, I don't think I missed something important, but we can always go deeper into these topics if you're interested. But says, I was getting into a lab environment to see if things would work on my home gear, which only has Intel Xe onboard graphics. Those are still not greatly supported, if I recall correctly, but didn't I read about the most recent Linux kernel that there's much better support for Xe now in there? Short answer, it works. Long answer, Intel Xe isn't strengthy enough to do the work I needed to do. Okay. Yeah, I guess if you're going to do some serious Unreal Engine stuff, there needs to be quite a bit of horsepower. Not that I would know what I'm not talking about, but at least not in terms of Unreal Engine or other game engines. But from what I can see, why people keep buying the RTX 4000 line, that's definitely one of the reasons. So what Balthazar did, following in the footsteps of giants, was backport those changes into the 6.5 PvE kernel. Wow, okay. I would have loved to look over your shoulder doing that. Was it complicated? Did it take a lot of work? There's a difference between the Xe, which is probably, if I understand correctly, more the customer graphics line, and then there's Arc, which is a little bit beefier, right? I never looked into that. I mean, I simply bought NVIDIA so far because obvious. And only in recent years I learned that AMD would be a better idea in terms of kernel support and drivers and stuff. But I did never get as far as looking into Intel graphics, actually. I wouldn't mind having, and I do have Intel graphics on my laptop, actually. But as long as it can display the GNOME desktop, I'm happy. So I've never looked into what it can do and where its limits would be. Rebsy asks, if Linux is an OS like Windows and macOS, what are these different kernels in Linux? Are they like versions and updates of the window of macOS? No, they aren't. So let me think of a comparison that makes understanding that a little bit easier. Usually people are not very precise when they talk about an operating system, because from a layman's perspective, the operating system is what comes up when you power on your machine, right? However, you can be much more subtle and precise by distinguishing different components, because generally, and from a computer science standpoint, the operating system is the software that makes the hardware usable by any kind of software. If you run Excel, for example, you probably will want to store your spreadsheets on a disk. But Excel doesn't have anything built in that can access an SSD or a USB drive or something like that. Why would anyone build that into Excel and build it into Word and build it into any other software that wants to save a file? So that's the part that the operating system does. The application, like Excel, only says, I want to save a file, here's the name, that's what the user input and put in, I guess, then it's the job of the operating system to actually turn that into bits and bytes that get stored on a flash drive or something like that. So the application doesn't have to care about these things. The graphical user interface is not necessarily part of that operating system, and on Linux that becomes pretty apparent, because you can run the Linux operating system with a great bunch of what's called desktop environments or window managers, all kinds of stuff, very sparse window managers that almost have no window chrome, no decorations and stuff like that, and full-fledged desktop environments that can rival macOS, like GNOME or KDE. So the graphical user interface is not really part of the operating system, and it's completely exchangeable, actually. It's just a fact that neither Microsoft nor Apple bother with offering you alternative graphical user interfaces. There's only one for each. On Linux, that's different. And when we talk about Linux kernels, then we talk about the actual operating system, the thing that translates between the software that you run and all kinds of system resources and devices. Does that make it a little bit clearer? And we're talking about Linux kernels in different versions, because Linux, of course, gets updated. We were talking in the context of graphics cards. Graphics cards are hardware, and so there needs to be support in the operating system in the form of graphics drivers that can actually display stuff on the screen. So when an application comes and says, I want to display this window, i.e. a rectangle with stuff in it, then the graphical user interface needs to tell the operating system, well, I'd like to display this rectangle. Take care of that. I don't care if there's an NVIDIA card built in or an Intel card, or maybe there isn't even a graphics card built in the first place, and someone uses this machine via a remote connection. Still, I want them to see my window, and that's what the operating system then does. As I said, it took surprisingly little work to backport the kernel. Okay, great, congratulations. XE is the new onboard GPU, and compared to its predecessors, it's really powerful. Yeah, I got that feeling from the little I read about it. It seems to be much further ahead than the usual onboard graphics that everyone knew was worth shit. Balthazar disagrees. Linux isn't an operating system. Okay. Julian, welcome to the stack. Good to have you. So, Balthazar, I know that you didn't that wasn't meant antagonistic. So, would you like to elaborate on why Linux isn't an operating system? It'll definitely be helpful. Oh, my coffee cup is leaking. Spilling stuff all over the place. Julian says, ¿me recuerdas, amigo, días sin verte? Sí, sí. Te recuerdo. ¿Cómo estás? Rep says, so operating systems are instruction parsers for hardware to interpret what to do. They are the bridge to the hardware, basically. Whenever we talk about drivers, especially when in the context of Linux, hardware drivers, that's part of the operating system. So if a software wants to access storage, it goes through the operating system. If an application wants to access a graphical interface, a graphics card, it talks to the operating system. If it wants to access the network, it talks to the operating system. So the operating system is what allows other software to access and use hardware. It also does a lot of stuff more, but that'll now take us into a computer science lecture. Guava Glitch extends the topic by asking, what is the difference then between a kernel and an operating system? Yeah, that's something we probably should tease apart. Balthazar says Linux is an operating system kernel, much like Darwin is the BSD kernel that powers macOS, or NT kernel is the kernel that powers the core functions of Windows. Yeah, that's very precise. I knew that I could count on you. If you were attentive, you might actually have seen references to the word kernel, even on Windows, or to the word Darwin when you are using macOS, because yeah, that's the core of each operating system, and then there are layers around that core that then build the whole of macOS and the whole of Windows. Moolol says hello everyone, welcome to the stack, Marcus. Bethesda says, great question. To give you an analogy, if an operating system is a car, the kernel is the engine. Wow, yeah, that's great. Julian says, estoy bien, amigo, contento de tanto apoyo de la comunidad, me motiva mucho. Happy to see it, but let's switch back to English, so everyone can take part in the conversation. But I'm happy that you're here and that you're enjoying things. Glitch asks, so like the instruction flow is like operating system to kernel to hardware. That's really complicated. See, I'm struggling because now that we are teasing this apart so precisely, I really want to give you a precise answer that doesn't muddy the water again, and that's actually not that easy. So the usual way people express or describe the operating system in the context of Linux is the Linux operating system is basically the Linux kernel, which is the software that Linus Torvalds developed a long time ago, more than 30 years ago now. And that's, again, dealing with all the hardware stuff. And that in itself wouldn't be very useful, but because you have to interact with this kernel in a way. You need to tell it to use a flash drive, to load the driver for a graphics card and things like that. So there needs to be some kind of interface that the system administrator can use to get the kernel working in a way that is useful to the user. And so there's a bunch of commands and software applications around the Linux kernel, and especially for the Linux kernel, that do that. And the package of Linux kernel plus these system administration utilities and software libraries that can be used by software, I can get into that in a minute. That's usually considered the Linux operating system, because if you package these things together, you get something that can actually be used on a PC, and then you will be able to install application software and things like that. So we have the Linux kernel, we have the tools and utilities that are directly related to the Linux kernel that you need for system administration. And then we have what I just mentioned is the libraries. These libraries contain software code that is useful for and gets used by a lot of programs. So if you have specific code that needs to be executed every time you want to use the operating system for task X, there is probably a library that you can use. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can simply pull in this library into your own software and use the code that's already there. And that makes developing applications much easier. So yeah, I would say this triangle of kernel plus utilities plus libraries, and even the utilities probably will use these libraries, is what I would call the Linux operating system. Yeah, Balthasar says, if you're being more specific, the operating system is a collection of interfaces that allow you to interact with the kernel. Yep, these interfaces are called system calls, and these are points, locations where a software can talk to the Linux kernel and ask about stuff. That interface in Linux starts with POSIX, which is a standard for these system calls, but then additional layers are added atop of it. Yeah, and these layers are what makes things complicated, because oftentimes we aren't really precise in delineating where one thing starts and the other ends. So that's why I did put a little bit of thought into my answers in this discussion. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the beginning of a operating system lecture when you study computer science. Building blocks of an operating system, and what is an operating system used for, and where does it end? These are the typical topics. My college time is quite a way in the past, so I had to piece things together again. I intend to do a Linux course later this year, because yeah, it's going to be later this year because it'll take a lot of work to put the course together. But there will be a module in there that will also talk about what an operating system is. Actually, I have a video on that, and I should put that on my YouTube channel. Reps asks, okay, so then why do programmers state that Linux is the best operating system? What is the difference? And Inode says, hey there, welcome back. Welcome to the stack. Yeah, I agree, Balthasar. Programmers working on different projects will have different opinions on what is the best OS, because, well, if you go to a programming conference nowadays, you will see a lot of apples on laptop displays. So I'm not sure if Linux is generally considered the best operating system. Tiberian, hey, how are you doing? But I do consider Linux the best operating system for what I do. My job is managed hosting, and so what we do is run hundreds of Linux servers, and of course I also chose, well, not of course, but I did choose Linux as my operating system for my workstation here as well. I'll have to admit, after using macOS for, I think, around or more than 10 years. And then I realized, yeah, Linux does at least as good a job as my workstation operation OS as macOS does. And the more Apple limits usage of their machines and their software, the more Linux gets the upper hand in that. But in general, it's simply flexibility, but that might be a good a time to also use the word freedom. Because as I said, for example, in Linux, you have a huge choice in terms of graphical user interfaces in graphical desktop desktop environments. And so it comes down to preference, what GUI you used on your Linux machine. If you use KDE, GNOME, or something more simple like Sway or i3 or something like that. And this freedom of choice, you'll find that everywhere in the Linux ecosystem. You can use a lot of different software for any use case. And so there's no one who tells you what you need to run and what you can run, like with Windows and macOS. And of course, we could go much further in the direction of the freedom term For example, Tiberian added another angle here. It's just about open source. If you don't have any instructions how to do something, you can read the source code. That's another freedom. It's not in this case. It's not the freedom of choice, but the freedom of looking behind the scenes. If software comes without any documentation, actually you can go, and I do that regularly. You can go and look at the source code. If you are able to read it, then you can basically investigate yourself what the software is doing and what it's not doing. Bethesda says, really what it boils down to is the ergonomics for the task at hand. Linux can be very Spartan, allowing you to strip away the things you don't need to run, only the things you need for your task. So for systems that don't need, say, advanced graphics rendering or multidimensional security and auditing, Linux is great. Yeah. You can pick the stuff that you want and strip out the stuff that you don't want. I mean, if you want, you can run Linux without any graphical user interface and run it like it's the 80s and 90s again, and run it in a text-based way, and that'll work as well. Tiberian says Fluxbox/Blackbox is really good if you like a minimal desktop. Yep. Rep says, let me give more context. In terms of hosting things for web development, I ran into these other technologies like Dixie and servers, and how hosting a website is basically running your application server on a virtual terminal, and in Docker it has concepts from Linux in them. My question is, why are they in Linux and not something like Windows? Stuff like PowerShell stuff. I'm not sure if I'm confusing things here. Well, you're covering a lot of ground there, so I guess we really need to be a little bit more diligent in how we keep topics apart. The question, why are these things in Linux and not something like Wait, is your question why is Linux the operating system that usually gets used to run web services? Is that one of your questions? Why is Linux the first operating system that gets used when it comes to running web servers and stuff like that? Because that's a question that we can. Yes, okay, I see. Well, that's for historical reasons, I'd say. Because there is an operating system that was created before Linux, called Unix, and the internet was built using Unix machines, basically. I mean, of course, I'm simplifying here, but if you allow me to be simplistic, the internet was built on Unix, and Linux, as the name probably implies, is kind of a successor of Unix. There's a lot of history there as well that we would have to unpack, but yeah, this really becomes CS 101 here. Yeah, and so all the technologies that the early internet was built upon are perfectly realized in Linux as well. And that makes Linux the ideal operating system to continue running internet-based services. And that's why it has the dominant role in that space. Before I go any further, let me catch up with chat. Maybe someone already gave answers that I don't have to repeat. Bethesda says, in web development, many users gravitated to macOS because the BSD/Unix subsystem is quite similar to Linux/POSIX, so you could run much of the same software in Linux and macOS, but with the fit and finish of Apple's OS and experience. Yeah, that's basically the short summary why I started using macOS in the early 2000s. See, the thing that is called Darwin, the operating system core, in macOS is actually also based on Unix. The people at Next, on which the modern macOS is based, so Next Step is the operating system that the people at Next developed, and Apple then bought Next and integrated their technology into for their hardware, which means we are basically also running a Unix-like operating system kernel when we're running modern Apple hardware, especially if we're running Macs. And what Apple managed to put on top of that is a very polished graphical user interface with applications that are just as polished, because Apple did the right thing and made prescriptions on how to write software for their operating system called the Human Interface Guidelines, HIG, I think. So that is actually a great combination, having a Unix based operating system kernel with a great GUI that makes things easy. And that's, of course, is attractive for people who are not only developers, but also design-oriented, as web developers and web designers usually are. iNote says, on my first IT job, I used CentOS 6 laptop, then Debian, and after that to my second job where I switched to a Mac Pro. Now I work with Linux Mint. I have to say, if I have to choose between Linux and Mac, I will choose Linux always. Yeah, that makes sense. I can now. I'm at a point where I can actually completely relate. It was kind of accidental that I got to Linux as a desktop operating system, and I've talked about that a lot of times on this stream. Tiberian says, my loved question is how Docker works and which kernel features it used to make container work. Yeah, Docker is just a brand name for a technology that's called Linux containers. And that's a technology that is very close and integrated into the Linux kernel. And so it was always a Linux technology. And that's why Docker is basically at home on Linux. And if you run Docker on macOS or Windows, what these operating systems actually do is run a lightweight virtual machine to get the Linux going that they need to get Docker going. Yeah, both are still on the same wavelength as I. Short answer is the people that were building the early internet also built Unix. I'm blindly clicking on stuff here. Need more coffee. Still spilling. I hate it. As far as I can tell, Reps, under the Docker daemon, there is just a lightweight Linux operating system. Yes, I don't think that has changed in any way. If you are running Docker, you are actually running Linux, if you know it or not. Is it not? Well, the Docker daemon itself is not Linux, but it's based on Linux, or it requires Linux to run. The Docker daemon is a Linux service that provides the API for creating Docker content. Yes, that's right. Not sure if... yeah, I was reluctant to go that deeply into details, just to not lose our viewers here. The Docker daemon is what manages the Docker containers, but for the Docker container technology to even work, you need a Linux kernel. At least that's the my interpretation of things. Bethesda's Docker engine, which you can install on macOS and Windows, is a lightweight Linux VM plus the Docker daemon. Yeah, exactly. Hanso, hi, welcome to the Stack. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, because, you know, Docker containers are just, yeah, I'm again simplifying, so everyone who's more familiar with the technology, please pardon my simplifications, but I'd like to, I don't want to overwhelm people. Docker containers are actually just Linux processes running applications, or applications running based on a Linux kernel that are especially isolated from each other. Yada yada C groups, etc. And that allows you to run multiple containers in parallel without these containers necessarily interfering with each other. They can communicate with each other. For example, you can run your web application and you can run another container with a database, and the web application can then talk to the database. In the end, all these things that you run as containers are just Linux processes that have a little bit more security around them. Yeah, that's how I would describe it in a short way. That's why we love you, Balthazar. I really like how you always try your best to be precise and not mislead people and give them a proper picture of things. You're doing great. And by the way, the fact that Docker containers are kind of special Linux processes is also the explanation why sometimes you have so much difficulties running Docker-based stuff on macOS or on Windows. Because, for example, I'm not sure if that's resolved by now, but sharing files from your operating system, say from macOS, with a Docker container oftentimes was very slow. And that's simply for the fact that they needed to find a way to make files that are managed by macOS available to a different operating system, to the Linux that is required to run Docker containers. And so you had actually to find a way how to share files between two operating systems, and oftentimes the indirections that you have to put in to make that possible, slowed down things quite a lot, so that people started complaining, why is my web application running slow as heck if I run it in a Docker container on macOS? And Hansoe, yes, please ask questions. There is no stupid question, there is only stupid answers, and that's my domain. So feel free to ask any question you like. If it's not too personal. And Bethatar adds that the same issue also was happening on Windows. Yeah, it's simply because these Docker containers actually run in a virtual machine, the same virtual machine that runs the Linux kernel, and you had to find a way to bridge this, the file system of the virtual machine with the file system on your host operating system, on your macOS or Windows. And there was a performance loss in between. Rep says, wouldn't the copy command in the Docker file fix this issue? Yes, it would, because copy just needs to read the files once during the build phase of the container, and then everything is on the file system of the container, which is a Linux file system, which is perfectly accessible to Linux with full performance. The issue only happens when you use volumes to make files on your host operating system available to a running container. And this volume mapping, as it's called, or mounting of a volume, that's where the performance went out of the window.
I know this.
Dan is bored. Welcome to the stack. I hope I don't bore you. I hope this channel will be very entertaining and educational for you. Welcome to the stack. And thank you for the congratulations. I think today is my actual stream anniversary, even though Twitch has been advertising this for 2 days now. So yeah, 6 years ago I became a affiliate, which means I've been doing this racket for probably 7 or 8 years now.
I know this.
Tomatoes cannot be trusted. I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure I'm happy you're around. Thanks for the congratulations as well. Hansohai says, I'm currently on my Linux journey around 4 months ago and started being a Java developer around 1 year ago. I'm only aware that systemd is relevant to server development. What else should I know? Oh, lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. So much stuff, actually. Dear me, I need to get this Linux course going. Bethesda says, the problem with file system performance is indeed a problem with crossing the operating system / virtual machine boundary. So if the files you're accessing are on the same file system of the virtual machine, whether they baked into the container image or on the local file system of the Docker engine, then there isn't a performance penalty, I guess, is the end of that sentence. Hanso asks, I did a systemd service for the Java server. What else should I be aware of? I have no idea what's relevant to you. I mean, the whole Linux space is huge, but you don't have to know everything. I don't know everything after using Linux since 1993. I'm afraid you'll have to answer a little bit more specifically. Indrak joining us. Hello, Indrak. How you doing? Systemd uses groups, C groups. Yeah, Systemd itself, I wouldn't say it uses C groups. It can manage C groups, but I'm not sure where you're hinting at with your question. So yeah, I think we've exhausted these questions quite well. Keep them coming. And by the way, speaking of questions, tomorrow at 2 p.m. UTC, so around the same time as today, I'll be doing my Monospace Mentor office hour, where it's all about your questions. This is actually supposed to be a little bit of a live coding stream today, where I actually do a little bit of my work. Tomorrow, the whole office hour, which often turns into 2 or 3 office hours actually, is all about your questions. So if you have more questions, you can still ask them here today, but tomorrow will be dedicated to your questions. Rep says, it's weird how your accent comes across with a hint of German, but you speak Spanish. Unless, do you speak multiple languages? Ja, ich spreche sowohl Deutsch y hablo un poco de español también. I also had 8 years of Latin in school, but don't force me to speak Latin now. Yeah, I'm a German living in Ireland, and I love languages. Not only programming languages, but also spoken languages. Indrek says, I was just trying to understand C groups more clearly based on Balthasar's comment about C groups making Docker possible. Yeah, and that was actually what I was referencing when I said Docker containers are actually just Linux processes with a little bit of security around them. This magic security that I was talking about is actually implemented by using C groups. C groups allow the Linux kernel to isolate processes in a way that they alone can use certain resources, that they have their own network addresses and things like that. That's actually the technical side of what I was referring to when I said Docker containers are just isolated Linux processes. This isolation is done by using C groups. Balthasar asks, would I blow your mind if I told you that you could run a Docker-style container without Docker using systemd? That's one possibility. And there is actually other container-based technology as well. For example, there is LXC, the Linux containers, which is actually the base technology that the people from the Docker project and now from the Docker company based their container technology upon. And you can definitely use LXC or the more modern Incus project to run Linux containers as well. And with them, you won't even have to issue a single Docker command. And Podman does indeed use C groups. Yep, that's correct. Podman is another way to run containers without using Docker, the tool that comes from Docker Incorporated.
It's a Unix system. I know this.
Henning T says, hello from Northern Germany. Hello back. Wie geht's? Oh, we're getting really into the weeds. Balthasar says, Docker, Podman, and sorry, and Kubernetes all support the OCI, or Open Container Initiative standard, which is a standard that was created when this whole container technology thing exploded, because then suddenly we needed to have some kind of a standard body, which involves running processes in isolation on Linux using in-part C groups. Oh, missed a message that I wanted to click. Indrek asks, so does it go C groups, LXC, Docker, Podman, or is it not quite that clear? You're confusing a little bit of container technology history with oh no, you don't. It's actually If you're talking about, if that's meant to be chronologically, then it's basically pretty much LXC, which comes with the C groups technology. They basically go hand in hand, if I'm not completely mistaken. So that was the one of the fathers, the ancestors of modern container technology. And then the Docker project was launched that wanted to make the LXC technology more accessible, more easy to use, especially for developers who aren't as much into system administration. After that, Podman as a project was created to offer an alternative to Docker, especially when they started to put licensing on top of their technology.
I know this.
We also have LXD, which makes Linux containers independent of Docker more easily usable. Then Canonical came and made LXD less free. I'll just put it like that and leave it at that. And that again then created a fork of the LXD project called Incus, INCUS. So yeah, even the container ecosystem now is really, really complicated. And I'm not even touching Kubernetes to not derail things even further. iNode also adding on my home lab, I run both Docker and Incus. LXC, LXD now kind of sucks since it was taken by Canonical, I assume. That's what you meant. And Demian says, happy affiliate anniversary. Thank you. Welcome to the stack. Happy to have you here. Happy to be that I'm doing this with a lot of fun for many, many years now. And Demian says, learning DevOps. Thanks for the stream. Happy to do so. I do enjoy these streams tremendously. That's why I keep returning. That's also Gordon Nast. Thank you for following. All these people coming in. I love it. And Han Codes. No, Han Codes. Sorry. I still need to learn how to properly pronounce your name. Happy to have you here. Berthas answers, yeah, that's fair. LXD was the first user space implementation of applying Z groups, yeah. And user space implementation pretty much means stuff that a normal user can use that is outside of the operating system kernel space. I mean, the kernel doesn't really help you much if you can't access it as a user, and that's what we call the user space. So yeah, while we can technically separate them, it's more reasonable to group them together. Yep, thank you. Reps asks, can you use Docker containers to run Windows virtually? I answer that by via a question. A Docker container is a Linux process. There's a pretty clear line in the sand of what LXC and Docker, what makes LXC and Docker different, I guess. And that's the fact that Docker brings a networking layer along with it. Docker not only provides process isolation, but also network isolation. Oh yeah, that's a smart addition here. Thank you, Nan. Okay. I probably should have anticipated that not all the letters in your name get pronounced. Living in a country whose ancestral language has a lot of very confusing pronunciation rules. And I'm speaking about Irish, of course. And so I asked, I heard devs use Docker to include their dev setup, like IDE, CI/CD, etc. Not sure how common this is. It's quite common. Not everyone chooses to go that route, but it's definitely possible. The thing is, once you start running your project inside a container, for example, in my case, that would be, for example, a Ruby on Rails web application. Now you run this application inside a container. You also run containers for all the auxiliary stuff, like the database that you need and stuff like that. Now everything runs in containers, which is really nice because it doesn't pollute your host operating system, your host machine. You don't have processes conflicting with each other. So that's why containers are so popular among developers. They allow you to keep things tidy. Everything runs in its own sandbox, and once you close that sandbox, it's gone. The only thing is, you want to interact with that sandbox, and then you run into these performance issues that I mentioned earlier and things like that. So some people actually choose to go whole hog and say, okay, since the web application runs in a Linux container, I'll simply go inside that Linux container and do my work in there, so I don't suffer any performance penalties. It's like I work on Linux, even though the container might be running on macOS. Then they realize, yeah, I need an editor to edit my code on this Linux container, so they install a Linux-based editor, which might still be VS Code, but it might also be something like Vim. And suddenly they find themselves working inside a Linux container, i.e. working on Linux. I'd say many of them definitely enjoy that and realize they enjoy that. And well, that's actually a great thing for the Linux operating system. Bethesda says, which means you can run almost any operating system in a Docker container if you really want to. It's possible. Because when I said Docker containers are Linux processes, I had in mind that it's actually possible to run all kinds of stuff as a Linux process. Because, hey, I even run World of Warcraft here on my Linux machine via... I don't know how many virtualization layers, but in the end, I'm running World of Warcraft on Linux. So that means, yeah, with enough abstraction layers in between, you can run anything as a Linux process, which means you can run anything as a Linux container. If that's efficient, if that's easy to manage, or anything else, if that's pleasant in the end, that's a completely different story, actually. Reps asks, I asked this because I have a friend who was using Parsec on a containerized Windows computer in his personal server from school. Remind me again, what's Parsec? Bethesda says you don't have to do that, though. Yeah, I wouldn't have. Okay, going back to the development environment discussion. VS Code and JetBrains IDE both can talk over the container TTY interface to containerized instances, with the IDE itself running on the host. Yeah, of course, the IDE vendors realized, okay, before we force people to start using Vim inside a Linux container, we'd rather support containers better from our IDE, which they can run natively on, say, macOS. And so they added support to be able to nicely interact with containers without the performance penalties and other issues. Yeah, that makes things a lot easier for developers. Rep says it's for gaming. Parsec is a remote desktop application specifically tuned for high quality, high frame rate remote access, which of course is necessary if we want to do gaming. Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's actually hard to answer because just from looking at things, it's often not clear-cut what runs inside the container and what runs on the host operating system. Bethesda says it's kind of like Citrix for the masses. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the masses don't even know what Citrix is. Okay. Wow, we've been answering questions for more than an hour now. But hey, it's a lot of fun. I'm not complaining, I'm just stating the fact. I will have to get more beverage though. Almost run out of coffee now. All right, folks. Keep chatting, keep asking, and I'll try to get a little bit into Ansible. And yes, Hanso, you're more than welcome. This is what this stream is about. It's about education. It's about sharing my actual work, which is what I'm going to do now. That's why I don't usually do pet projects like construed projects that I only do for the stream. Usually you find me doing work that I actually need for my day job, or day jobs now. That's the whole purpose of this channel, and that's why I call myself the Monospace Mentor. And you can find more about myself and also, for example, our Discord server, which is also full of friendly people like Balthazar, on monospacementor.com/Discord. No idea why that button did not work. Let me check. Did we lose connection to Twitch from our Stream Deck? Connections. Yes, it says connecting, but not connected. Let's reconnect the two so I can press the Discord button. All right, so what I'd like to do today is get into Ansible. If you know me, I'm more of a chef person myself, which doesn't mean that I enjoy cooking. From time to time I do, but I'm not very good at it. Chef is a configuration management software, and the software that we've been using for almost 14 years now to run our managed hosting business. Because if you run hundreds of Linux servers, you don't want to do manual system administration anymore. And Chef made it possible to automate everything and make sure that all our servers look the way they are supposed to look. Ansible is an alternative to Chef. It takes quite a different approach to things, and that's why I'm pretty curious. And most of my knowledge about Ansible is very theoretical, and that's why today I'd like to get a little bit of practice. So, the project that I have in mind is When I run my courses as the Monospace mentor, I have the issue that I need to provide my students with a training environment where they can practice what they've learned, and I need to make sure that it works. Nothing's worse than when you start a course or a workshop and 3 people raise their hands and say, yeah, the environment doesn't work. I can't log in. Or I can log in, but I can't start my Docker container or something like that. That's what happened in part when I did my recent Varnish course. I provided the participants with a Docker Compose setup that they were supposed to install on their own host machine. Most of them got it working immediately, but a few people actually struggled to get it running and then weren't able to participate in the practical exercises. And of course, I also don't want to waste time up front with debugging someone's workstation why Docker doesn't come up or something like that, while everyone else who has actually got Docker working gets bored and uses their time to answer email or stuff like that. That's not how I want a course to work. I want people to be able to jump right in, and if they need to do practice work, they need an environment where I can be sure that they will be able to hit the ground running. So I thought, okay, let's provide everyone with a cloud instance that I install beforehand, where I can make sure that everything is installed that's necessary to do the practical experiments, and where people simply log in via SSH and find everything they need, including maybe even the Git repository that is relevant for the course that I've prepared with the exercise materials. Of course, I don't want to have to set these student machines, these student cloud instances, up myself manually. I might be doing courses where I have 20 participants, and I'm not going to spend half a day with setting up machines. This needs to be automated, and for this use case, I think Ansible is suited perfectly. So that's what we're going to explore today. How can I spin up student VMs or cloud instances quickly, add their names to the DNS system so people can actually access them using a name like student3.monospace.training, and make sure they find everything what they need when they log in. So that's why we have to get into getting started with Ansible. I've already pulled up the docs here, and here we can see, and I really need to learn this stuff, Ansible automates the management of remote systems and controls their desired state. And of course, I need to find a way to define the state I desire them to be in. We have a control node, which is going to be my workstation here, where Ansible runs and keeps an inventory of the stuff that it needs to manage, which will consist of the managed nodes. In this case here we have 3 nodes, which all are managed using Ansible, and they are included in the Ansible inventory. So we have the control node, we have the inventory, which is a list of managed nodes that are logically organized, and then we have the managed nodes, as many as we want. Next. That's basically the purpose of Ansible. Ansible has these use cases: eliminate repetition and simplify workflows. Yeah, I don't want to have to do the same thing 20 times over and over again. Manage and maintain system configuration. I want to make sure that every student workstation or student VM looks like the other. We might want to continuously deploy complex software. No, that's not my use case at this time. and perform zero downtime rolling updates, that's also not going to be a concern. We can actually tear down student machines and completely build them up from scratch again. What differentiates Ansible from the Chef software that I mentioned earlier is that it works without an agent, which means I don't have to run Ansible software on the actual managed node. Ansible manages nodes using SSH itself. Simplicity, scalability and flexibility, idempotence and predictability. That's always important when it comes to configuration management. Idempotence basically means once a machine is in a state that is desired, running Ansible again will not do any changes. It will not make any changes. It will not try to reinstall software that's already on there. It will not overwrite configuration files with the identical content, which probably would be the case if you build a simple script that copies a configuration file, then it restarts the software, does something like that. Your script will probably do this every time you run it, regardless if the configuration file is already there in an identical state. Even if the software is already running using that configuration, it will still get restarted by your script. And with software like Ansible, things get a lot smarter, because Ansible can see, well, that configuration file already looks like it's supposed to look, so I'm not going to touch it. Which means, since I didn't touch the configuration file, I also don't have to restart the software, because it is already running with the correct configuration file. So that's an important thing when we are talking about configuration management or system management. That is getting us into DevOps territory here. So start automating with Ansible. Install Ansible. I don't think I have yet installed Ansible. Let's try and check. No, it's not available. Thankfully, I have now Homebrew on my machine, so I can simply say brew install Ansible. And while it's doing that, I'll catch up with chat. Duke asks, have you ever worked with Nextcloud before? Somehow there's one singular user, from what I know at least, no one else reported anything, who somehow can't upload anything, just results in an unknown error for him. Given I did upgrade Nextcloud not too long ago, was long overdue. I tested it and can upload just fine. We actually do use Nextcloud in my business as our groupware, basically. But we decided to have it managed by a company who specializes in Nextcloud services, so we don't have to take care of these things. Even though we would, of course, be perfectly capable of running Nextcloud ourselves, I don't want it to become a distraction. If I have the choice between getting Nextcloud up and running and doing something that gets us more money from our customers, I choose to do the latter, so I delegate things like that to other companies who in turn make that their core business. And we give them money for that. So I'm afraid I won't be able to help you debug that. Sorry. Einot says, Ansible is great. I tried it a week ago to test some command executions on several machines and it works great. And with Ansible playbooks, you can do the same you do with Chef cookbooks. Exactly. We are going to build a playbook today. Yashadav, hello, welcome to the stack. What are you teaching about? I'm a kind of a full stack engineer, but mostly specialized in system administration and site reliability engineering. And so that's what I'm about to start here just this minute. I will build an Ansible playbook that will allow me to set up student cloud instances for my courses in an automated way. Yes, Hetzner does offer managed Nextcloud as well. However, they put the emphasis on the storage aspect of things, and that's how we got into Nextcloud years ago, actually, simply as our centralized cloud storage. What they don't do very actively is cater to the rest, to the groupware aspect of Nextcloud. It does run, but I wasn't confident enough to base our business processes on that. So what I did was I switched to Netways, and they do offer a full-fledged Nextcloud, managed Nextcloud hosting. All right, Ansible is installed, so we can go on with the tutorial. Building an inventory. Okay. Let's see how we'll be able to do that. Create a file named inventory.ini in the Ansible directory, in my project directory basically. Add a new myhosts group to the inventory.ini file and specify the IP address or fully qualified domain name of each host system. Verify your inventory. Ping the myhosts group in your inventory. Okay. I see. Then inventories can be written in ini file format or YAML format. In most cases, such as the example of the preceding steps, ini files are straightforward and easy to read. Creating an inventory in YAML format becomes a sensible option as the number of managed nodes increases. For example, the following is an equivalent of the inventory.ini that declares unique names for managed nodes and uses the Ansible host field. I think we'll go with YAML from the get-go because, yeah, there's no reason why not to. And since this tutorial requires actual hosts being there already, I guess I'll simply spin up a few cloud instances and start working with those. And I think I should be able to do that easily because I have the Hetzner Cloud command line utility installed already. So let me see what the server command can do here. We can create a server. So let's see what create in specific does. We create and then we use flags like the data center. I don't really care about that at this point. We need an image for the installation of that machine. We need a name. And SSH keys that need to be injected so I can actually access the machine via SSH once it come up. Start after create is default by true, so I don't have to issue that. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. The only thing is I need to have an ID or a name of the SSH key. And I think I can simply use my usual identification for that. Okay, we'll try that. Duke says, if you don't mind me asking, I never mind people ask if they are sincere and not too personal questions. And you roughly know on top of your head, what does the Nextcloud hosting with Netways cost? Oh, you don't get as much storage like with Hetzner. So if you are looking for storage in particular, I think there's no better deal than Hetzner. But I think the entry-level managed Nextcloud with Netways costs €10, I think. But I think that's only 50 gigs of storage or something like that, which might still be more than enough than you need, because 10 terabytes is quite a word. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking them out. Netways Web Services is the branch that takes care of that. And if you go with them, say hello for me. I know the folks at Netways quite well. I've been meeting them at their conferences for over a decade now. Now, let's set up a server. How do I determine the image name? Is there a Hetzner Cloud image command? Yeah, there is, and there is a list. Okay, hcloud image list. Of course, I would like to get something Ubuntu-ish, or maybe we'll run Debian actually. Why not? Let's run Debian 12. So there's Debian 12, 2 images actually, an x86 image and the ARM image. So I guess... Oh, and by the way, I'm testing Zelich at the moment, as you can see. I'm not using tmux, which is my usual terminal multiplexer. I decided to give Zelich another try. I tried it about a year ago or so and went back to tmux, mostly because of muscle memory. But Zelich is actively developed, and so I was curious and said, okay, let's give that a try. Yeah, Zelich is basically tmux written in you-know-what. It is Hetzner Cloud. hcloud is the Hetzner Cloud CLI command, the CLI tool, basically. So I don't have to click around the user interface. I can do everything from my nice little terminal here. We might need the image ID here. And at least with my color scheme, I don't see when I mark stuff with the mouse, even though it does put it in the clipboard. So no idea if that's my Dracula color scheme or if that's a bug in the current version of Zelich. Okay, so we need to create a server. Let's go back to server create help. So hcloud server. Oh, we need a server type as well. hcloud server. How do I find out which server types there are? I'm afraid that will probably be the limit of what I can do with the CLI, huh? Hetzner Cloud server types. Of course, since we are experimenting, I can use the smallest plan there is, which means I'm going to go with the CX11. That only will cost me ½ cent per hour. So, as if it makes you feel any better, I've been studying Linux for 4 months and I still don't understand experience the terms you guys use. Oh, don't worry about that. As Balthasar says, it's a never-ending journey. I've been using Linux since 1993 and I'm still learning stuff every single day. And that's a fun. That's what's keeping me at it. Ooh, Duke, almost a terabyte of stuff there. Yeah, you might be hitting the higher price points at Netways with that. So maybe... Maybe give Hetzner a try for both their storage and the groupware suite. Or maybe split things up. I mean, the Nextcloud client on your machines can talk to, say, Hetzner for the storage and sync your directories. And you can still go to the Netways website to their Nextcloud. And that way you might be able to get a fully working groupware at Netways and using the great storage price at Hetzner. No idea, actually. Now, okay, so let's try and spin up a server, shall we? hcloud, server, create, -- what do we need? Image. We'll use the image ID. Then we need a name. We'll call it student1. And we need an SSH key. And I hope gwiz at Cicero is going to be a working identification. Start after create is true anyway, and then we'll use CX11 as the type. No volumes. We could... No, we don't spin it up. We won't spin it up without IPv4 because I have no idea in what issues I'm going to run if I try to do just IPv6. That should not be a problem. So let's see if this works. That's not my SSH key. Oh, wait, it's going to try my... Oh, I see. So, I can actually... Can use this key? Oh no, it tries to look it up by fingerprint. Wait, ID or name of SSH key? Let me check that in private. -- public key from file. Interesting. We can also try that, but since I'm already trying to log in here... Oh, I think I know why. Hetzner Cloud actually separates every what they call project from each other, and so I might actually have to upload my SSH key one more time for my monospace project. Let me see, security. Yeah, there isn't even an SSH key uploaded there yet, but I should be able to do that from the CLI. Let's see. hcloud. Is there a key or something like that? Yes, SSH key. SSH key. Create. And here's the public key from file. Okay. So, public key from file. And then we'll do SSH. It doesn't auto-complete that. Is that still visible here? ID, ED. Yeah, it's ID. Okay, just a second. ID, yeah. ED 2551 sk.pub. And we'll call it gwiz at Cicero. No label. I think that's it. can you do it quietly? Okay, that's that. Now, let's create that server. Ooh, thinking of SSH keys. If I want to allow Ansible to manage stuff via SSH, I shouldn't actually use this key because that's the key that's also connected to my YubiKey. And I would have to touch that YubiKey every time Ansible would like to access any server. That will become boring quite quickly. So I should create an SSH key that works differently. And I need to investigate how that actually works. Let's do this way for the time being. I can always add another key for Ansible later. So let's see. Nope, that's not going to work again because it didn't work either. Oh, yeah, it seems to... No. Now I should be able to use the key name. And as inode adds, yeah, I need a key for Ansible too. So we have a new server, and the tutorial wants us to create an inventory. Oh, that's the book Ansible for DevOps. That's not what I was looking for. Here we are, building an inventory. So now I need to enter an editor. Let's try and copy that, even though it's invisible. We call it inventory.yaml. And it has my hosts, and then hosts, and then it lists them by name. Okay, so my hosts, student 1, and then Ansible host and the IP address. Like this. Right. My hosts, name, and the IP address as the Ansible host. Okay, great. Let's try and create another server. Student 2. Duke finding surprises in their Nextcloud setup. So here's the second machine. T1. Control T1 gets me back to the editor. That's how I switch between those tabs in Salic. Salic works a little bit differently to Tmux because it has a lot of command keyboard shortcuts. And so you use Control T and then 1 to switch between tabs, for example. Or actually, I might actually be able to switch with Alt 1 and Alt 2 even 2. So let's see, Ansible host. What happens if I press Alt 2? No, that's not working. Okay. Might get me moving between panes, but this tab only has one pane at the moment. So let's save this. That's enough for now. And then we should be able to run Ansible inventory-i inventory.yaml in my case, and then a list. Okay, let's do that. Control T2. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't it? think I forgot to press Ctrl+C. Now. What happens if we do this? Yeah, that looks good. My hosts ungrouped. The hosts are student 1 and student 2, and they have IP addresses. So this the syntax seems to be correct. Now we should be able to ping those hosts using the ping module of Ansible. So let's copy that. Inventory.yaml. We always have to modify that. Oh, it can't access them via SSH. Interesting. So ping isn't actually an ICMP ping. It actually tries to log in and sees if it can even do what it's supposed to do. So we need to actually allow it to reach these machines, which it can't. So what we need to do is actually give Ansible its own key that works without having to do some kind of additional authentication, like for example with my key to touch the YubiKey in my workstation. So the funny thing is, I think I already have one. Let me see. Because I did some experimenting with Ansible in the past. Not on this machine though, it seems. Interesting. Is that on my... it might be on my Stream VM that I haven't used in a while, or it might be on my laptop. Anyway... So, since there is no key, we'll create one. SSH keygen. We'll still use RSA. And we'll write that to home.ssh id RSA Ansible. No passphrase. I guess it can't deal with the tilde. Let's try again. Let's go to var home gvis.ssh id rsa underscore Ansible. No passphrase. Here we go. Now I need to copy the public key to the machines. So let's see. Look at that. If I... yeah. Bat doesn't have a... So here's the IP addresses. SSH copy ID. I will have to give it the identity file, which is going to be home.ssh ID RSA Ansible to root at this IP address. Missing the 9 here. Connection refused. Why is that? Oh wait, yes, of course. I think it's not identity file. That's the identity file it's supposed to use to authenticate. And we'll have to use... which one, actually? What happens if I just do this? Still gets connection refused, though. Let me see. Catch up with chat, so you don't feel ignored. Balthasar says, in my experience, I find it better to take advantage of an SSH keychain for that. But you do generally need a way to provide both the SSH key and your become sudo credential without user interaction. Yeah. And you may also need to ensure that your Ansible user is set appropriately. Yes. But at the moment, I'm not even trying to run Ansible, so we have a little problems that are even a layer or two deeper than that. What do I need to do here? I find it strange that I can't log in, but maybe I... Oh. Let's try SSH, shall we? It still says connection refused. Why does it? -I. ID. Well, that is strange. It's the same for the other machine. 65, 109, 11, 63. No. Yeah, that worked. Did we get the wrong IP address for student 1? Let me check. Oh yes, it's not 9, it's 96. Yeah, we were knocking at the wrong door and probably annoying someone. Here we go. That was wrong. Sorry for that. Let's try again. Here we go. Yeah, so 96. T1. Okay. There we go. T2. Still. Now we can attempt the SSH copy ID. I pressed enter accidentally. Copy ID. I do think I was actually correct in doing it this way. Yep. I think that didn't work. Okay, what happens if I try the Ansible one? You know, sometimes an hour of trying around saves you whole minutes of RTFM, so let's find out how copy ID actually works. So, let's see. Use only the keys contained in identity file. If the file name does not end in pop, this is added. If the file name is omitted, the default ID file is used. Note that this can be used to ensure that the keys copied have the comment one prefers and or extra options applied by ensuring that the key file has these set as a preferred before the copy is attempted. So this is actually to limit the files or keys that get copied. By default, it adds the keys by appending them to the remote user's authorized keys. Yeah, of course, that's what I want them to do. Default behavior without -i is to check if provides any output and if those keys are used. So yeah, I do issue the key that I want to copy using the -i. So let's point it at the Ansible key then. ID RSA Ansible.pub. User presence. That's that. Ahora el llave segundo. Nice. So that should allow us to actually log in using the Ansible key. Without passphrase. Yeah, that should enable Ansible to do its thing. Question is, how do I tell Ansible to use this particular key? So it's going to be the Ansible command, and we'll use the ping module with our inventory file. Let's find out using the command itself. So, oh, that's a lot of stuff. So let's make a page. Become user is going to be root. Is the become password file my key? I guess no, that's private key, I would assume here. Right, let's see, -- private. Use this file to authenticate the connection. Yeah, okay. So, if we try this. Inventory.yaml, but add, I guess we'll add it here. Become user root, private key, home.ssh, ID RSA, and Ansible. Yeah, not .pub, it's private key. Then my host session, yeah, let's see. Oh, that did not work. Turk says auspicious piano was reading suspicious piano at first. Yeah, not every piano is suspicious. That's the session name, actually. If I create a new ZH session, which I can do in parallel, I can spawn as many sessions as I want. They'll all get random names, and there is a way to rename them in a sensible way. But I haven't explored that yet. Oof. Well, okay, that's something we'll need to investigate. It's very basic. So Ansible, SSH, user, and key. Not the first person to ask that. Variable name you're looking for is Ansible SSH private key file. In the inventory file. We can actually put that in the inventory file. Interesting. In a group vars file. In the vars section of an entry in a play. Uh-huh. Okay, so what would be the canonical way to do things like that? Let's see. Ansible Playbook can specify the key using key file. Let's try key file next. Is it possible to specify the location in a playbook file so you don't have to add it all the time? Yeah, that does make sense. Maybe even in some kind of a global file. At least in the inventory file, I guess. So maybe looking up the inventory parameters would be a good idea. Here we have that. Ansible SSH private key file. Ansible become. Oh, I didn't specify become on the command line. I do remember that in my first experiments. So otherwise it won't even use the become user. Okay. That's an ini file. But I don't want to specify it on a per host basis either, so I haven't installed the Vimium expansion in this browser profile. We definitely need to do that. Okay, let's try another one. So host rather than inventory. Setting up SSH keys. Here we go. And that gets us where Balthasar was hinting at earlier, using an agent-based authentication. That also makes sense. I shouldn't have used my YubiKey based SSH key, because that will also have issues with the SSH agent. Because of the additional interaction with the YubiKey. But still. So here it says setting a remote user. And how do we do that on the command line though? I guess -u remote user, huh? become user is of course root, but that's for system administration purposes later. Once we want to execute the playbook, it needs to run as root. And if that's not the default, then we need to become user. But in this case, I want to connect as root. And that works much better. All right. Dan Kamo, hello. How you doing? Duke says, also just realized I should tell my coworker to add me as a sub-user to the Asana account for access. Not sure why he didn't already do that in these years, but that definitely is something that should happen when poop starts happening and servers go down and he's not available to get access. Yep. The joys of teamwork. Dan, how you doing today? Hope you're doing great. Now, let's get back to our tutorial. Can close this and go back to building an inventory. So that's our ping here, 2 successes. Tips for building inventories. Ensure that group names are meaningful and unique. Group names are also case sensitive. Avoid spaces, hyphens, preceding numbers in group names. So we could, yeah, okay. Is my hosts is the group name, right? Meta group name children. Okay, so you can get more groups here going. Okay. I see how this works. So what we could do, for example, is T1 and say that's not my hosts, that's actually student VMs. And I might actually want to add a teacher VM too that might have additional stuff installed or something for demonstration purposes. Yeah, always get 2 YubiKeys, Duke. They're great, and I find them very helpful, and they don't make things much more complex. But once you get used to them and use them, for example, as credentials on the web and things like that, then yeah, you definitely should have 2. Always have redundancy. So yeah, we'll call that student VMs, I guess, if I understand correctly how these groups work. So I should be able to then say ping my student VMs. And it works. Very nice. That was easy. Create variables. So like we added the Ansible host, we can also add stuff like HTTP port or so, something like that. And that's arbitrary, right? And then there's a vars section if you want to have one variable apply to everything. Okay. So for example, we can define the Ansible user in here. Now we can go ahead. Oh, that's part of the inventory, is it? Okay. So it's not part of the playbook as I thought earlier. So we'll set a vars and then the Ansible user. That will shorten our command line. T1. So parallel to hosts, we'll have vars and we'll set, say, Ansible user root. And that means we can now get rid of that option. Nice. Yeah, I'm just pondering if I will add the Ansible SSH private key file. It might help repetition at a later time when I have forgotten what goes to the into the command line. So I think I'll do that. So let's add that too. Here, that's the Ansible SSH private key file, and that's .ssh id rsa Ansible. That'll of course require this key to be present on all machines on which I'd like to run this playbook in the future, but for the time being it'll make things easier. So let's see if I can shorten my command line even more. I can. That looks much more easy to distinguish. Yep. Thanks for that, inode. Yeah, the version 5 is definitely the way to go. I have one of the USB-A sized ones on my keychain, and I have a YubiKey Micro, I think it is, right in a USB 2 port on the front of my workstation. And it'll stay there. Okay. We're getting ahead. Creating a playbook. Create a file named playbook.yaml, and where we can actually ping them from the playbook without having to issue the -m ping. Okay, let's do that. So let's add a playbook.yml. Did I copy that? Yes, I did. My first play. That sounds lovely. Hosts, however, needs to be student VMs. Tasks, ping my hosts with Ansible built-in ping. And that print message. And no idea what it's going to do. Well, it's probably going to use echo or something like that, and run that on the target machine, I guess. So let's try that. How do we execute that? That's Ansible playbook with the inventory file and the playbook. Okay. Ansible playbook. -i inventory and playbook.yaml. Wonderful, wonderful. Both pinged and both said hello world. Success. Yeah, I'm not familiar with all the models that Yubico has. If you only do web-based authentication, I guess FIDO should be sufficient. Maybe the Yubico 5 is a little bit of overkill because it has this secure enclave also built in, which I think is not necessary for FIDO. Yeah, so it'll really depend on what you're going to use it for. Things are getting bleak. That was the last sip of coffee. So, should I suddenly start speaking much more slowly? Then upload me some emergency coffee quickly. You know, I think about these things like this. It's a one-time expense, and one-time expenses won't really hurt you if they don't. If you have the budget for the expense itself, you'll buy these things once in a while, and so don't overthink it. Just get one. It's the running costs that always get you. And YubiKeys don't have running costs, fortunately. Now, we did run our playbook. It ran successfully. Congratulations, you have started using Ansible. Alright. Okay, next step, building a playbook that uses the Hetzner Cloud API to create new servers, assigns them names, registers these names with the Hetzner DNS, and makes them available to my students. Right? Right? Anyone? The class? Bueller? Okay, baby steps. How did we get back to Ansible concepts, or is that now the deeper thing? Modules, plugins, connections, execution environments? No, I think we're getting off track here. I think somehow I landed in the more reference-like documentation, right? Okay. I'm not sure how to proceed from here. I know what I want to do. For example, I want to use the Hetzner Cloud module that's actually built into Ansible. But of course, I need to provide Ansible with a few details, how many machines I want it to create, and what to do if there are already machines. And those things will probably require a little bit of basic knowledge. Let's see. Using Ansible collections, using Ansible playbooks. Was that what we did? No. Yeah, okay, here we go. I think that's where we need to pick things up. Templating, that's definitely something we'll need. Lookups, interesting. Lookup plugins retrieve data from outside sources. So I can, for example, get a list of servers in my Hetzner Cloud project. That does make sense. Or we could look up a file. For more details and a list of lookup plugins in Ansible Core, see working with plugins. So, just for experimentation, in the Hetzner server module, what can we do here? Is there a lookup for servers? I guess that's to build a new server, right? Here we have examples, create a basic server, resize an existing server. I think this is about names, isn't it? So... okay. Since we have servers here, and let me issue another hcloud server list. They are named student 1 and 2, right? Yep. And there's my community server as well, which runs discourse for the server room, my upcoming community for DevOps practitioners. If you are interested in joining a community that is focused on your growth, seriously focused, including one-on-one coaching calls with me and stuff, then look into that and maybe sign up for the waiting list, because probably the only email that you'll get via this waiting list is when the server room is going to open its doors, and with that email you'll get a coupon code that will allow the first 20 people to sign up at half price for the lifetime of their subscription. So it'll definitely be worth it to sign up to the waiting list. We're going to start in April, as I can see from now, and I'm pretty excited about that. So, if that name is identical to the name in the hcloud server module, that means we should be able to define our servers manually like this. So let's remove this test code. We'll have set up student 1, name student 1. It's already CX11. We'll use the Debian 12 package. And since it's a CX11, that's an Intel-based image, so I guess it'll automatically use the Intel Debian image too. We'll remove the location. I didn't issue one when I created the server, and I'm not even sure if it was created in Germany or in Finland. No SSH keys either, and stayed present. So let's see what happens if I execute that playbook. T2. Ansible playbook. The inventory doesn't really matter, I guess. Hetzner hcloud server is not a valid attribute for a play. Okay. I guess we need a little bit more plumbing. It is not included in Ansible Core. Oh, I thought it was. Run Ansible Galaxy collection list. To install, use Ansible Galaxy collection install hetzner.cloud. Okay, let's do exactly that. Is already. Okay, so... Yeah, I thought so. And why doesn't it work then? I think it's because it needs to be assigned to a specific group. Let me see. No, there is no group. But the play needs to have a name, and then we'll have the tasks. Yeah. I'm missing a hierarchy here. So let's add that. That's actually set up student instances. Hosts, if at all. Yeah, let's use student VMs, I guess. Even though it doesn't really matter. And then we'll have the tasks, and this is going to be one of the tasks. Okay, let's see. No, wrong command. This one. Missing required arguments. Oh, sorry. I need some water. So I'll run an ad, take a short break, grab my water bottle, and then I'll be back. Okay, water. By the way, you can actually use a viewer reward to remind me to hydrate. Or if you think we need some DevOps affirmations, a little bit timeout for the soul of the poor DevOps engineer, you can redeem that too. Now. And Duke did exactly that, I guess. Not sure what it does. I'll tell you what it does. It's going to be a good way to relax. It's going to be DevOps affirmations. DevOps affirmations that help you lay off the stress, that reaffirm that what you do is actually something that makes sense, not only to you, but also to the people around you. So lean back for some DevOps affirmations. Begin by opening your heart to this exercise. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. You are in your happy place. There will always be coffee. That was a great joke this morning. They just weren't awake enough yet to appreciate it. You were born to deploy Rails applications. The way to success is paved with Docker images. Your team appreciates your design decisions. DevOps is a meaningful term. NeoVim will never leave you. There will be no incidents today. You are happy. You are happy. You are happy. I hope you enjoyed this little timeout, this little break to reaffirm that what we are doing is actually not complete bullshit. So, I mean, full credit to Krazam on YouTube who came up with this idea. But yeah, I enjoy it every time. Okie dokie, so let's get back to coding. Now, it tried to do something with the student machines. First of all, it's missing an API token, and I thought I would have set that in an environment variable. Yeah, there is an hcloud token, and it's supposed to use that. Let's take a look at why it doesn't. Wait. Now let's let's go back to HCloud server. So it complains that it doesn't have an API token, but it says you can also set this option by using the HCloud token environment variable, which I'm doing. Do I have to pass that on to Ansible explicitly? Let's see. Ansible environment variables. It might not automatically use it, huh? Remote environment? Yeah, we're not talking about remote environment, do we? Oh, you know what? I know what happens. What I'm telling Ansible here is to run this on my student VMs, which is of course not what I wanted to do. I want this to run on localhost. So here we go. Let's try this again. Of course, the SRCloud module won't work if we execute it on the student machines themselves. Now let's see how this works. Okay, it came back with OK2, changed 0, which means I think it left the student 1 machine unchanged because yeah, it already fits my prescriptions. So we could actually do it this way. And tell it to set up student 2 and even student 3. We'll have to provide it with the SSH key too. So let's look that up, how that works. Duke says, gotta go do some grocery shopping and this laptop somehow pooping its Wi-Fi connectivity for some reason. It's the perfect time to do that. Yep, that's probably a reminder to do your chores. Let it reboot and apply Windows updates. Oh dear, yeah, okay. We'll be back in a bit if you're still on then. If not, have a great rest of your video. You too, and thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. How to tell it about the SSH key? SSH keys. List of SSH key names. Okay. So we'll say SSH keys, and since it's a list, it's going to be an array. We'll simply tell it gwiz Cicero. And let's copy that to the other machines as well. So if I run this, we'll create a third machine. Let's see. Student 1. Quickly done. Student 1 is actually student 2, was quickly done too, and with student 3 it'll realize that's not there. Let's see if it creates one. Changed one. Brilliant. Inode says just managed to create a file named based on user input to 4 machines. Kind of cool. Yeah. Automation is amazing. Once you start, you want to automate everything. And I have to say, getting into Ansible is pretty easy. I mean, I have a lot of background on that stuff. I'll definitely, I can't forget the curse of knowledge that I have here, but as you can see, with a few lines in a YAML file, I can already script the setup of VMs. Or phrased another way, I can automate draining our bank account. But that's pretty cool. So let's fix this name here so it doesn't confuse us. And the thing with the item potency is that I can now go back to my shell and run this playbook again, and nothing will happen because everything is already as it is supposed to be. That's it. So that's already great. Of course, in the end I want to basically program this as a loop. So I'll have to find out how I can, for example, tell Ansible, well, simply count from 1 to 3 and each time create an instance here, if it's not already present, and name it student concatenated with the number. So that's definitely the end state of this, but this would already automate things quite a bit. And if I don't wait. Oh, okay, so yeah. My Vim motions work a little bit different now too in Zelich. So if I don't name this as generically as possible playbook.yaml, I'll call it setup.yaml. Let's rename this to setup.yaml. And if I copy setup.yaml into teardown.yaml, I can say tear down student instances, and in this case I'll simply change the state from present to absent. Not restarted, not started, not stopped. Well, we could start with stopping the VMs. And then we'll try absent, which should probably then destroy them. So let's see how stopped works. Stopped. And we'll not run playbook, but teardown.yaml. My descriptions aren't correct anymore, so I should also rename those. It did change student 1. Let me go back to my editor and quickly fix the comments here. So that needs to be tear down student 3, tear down student 2, and tear down student 1. How does Ansible deal with files changing while at once? Nope, that's okay. Let's do a HCloud server list to talk directly to the Hesna Cloud API, and they are all off. So now I can actually go ahead and run setup again. They're still off, but I guess it'll just take a second or so for them to spin up. Oh no, I think the difference is I'm checking for present, and they are definitely present. They're just not started. So that's the difference. Yeah, the nuances are not bad. So let's go and wait, where are we? So instead of present, we need started. T2. Let's do another setup round. Now it takes a little for student 1. And it's probably because it actually waits for the machine to spin up, not just to issue the API request. And now another HCloud server list. And they're running again. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Doing that with Chef would be a lot harder, because Chef is not really geared for this infrastructure level, but rather for once you have your infrastructure running, your servers, then you can use Chef to set everything up. And that's one of the advantages of Ansible. With Ansible, you can actually do both. You can have it create your infrastructure and also then set up your infrastructure as you want it to look like. Which is exactly the reason why I picked Ansible for this project. Okay. That's actually a good point at which we could wrap things up. Because now I have to think about what I actually want to do with these machines. Yes, we'll definitely explore DNS, because, yeah, I don't want to hand out IP addresses. As you saw with me, it's easy to use the wrong IP address and then things don't work and you wonder what it is, even though it's just a typo. So I definitely want Ansible to interface with Hetzner DNS as well, to register the IP addresses of the servers it has managed, or it is managing. Maybe we need something like a dynamic inventory, so these IP addresses actually get registered somewhere, that we can reuse them to create DNS records or something like that. That's something we'll have to investigate. And then we'll go and take a closer look at setting up each machine, installing commands or tools, cloning Git repositories and things like that. And then I'll probably want to see if I can actually provide Ansible with a kind of a configuration file where I tell it how many machines I need, which Git repository I want to have cloned for a specific course, and things like that. So we can expand that a lot more, and we'll do that another time, maybe next week. Tuesday and Thursday will again be... Nope, next week I'll be off on holidays, so that'll have to wait for a while. Next week and the week after, so the week before and after Easter, I'll be off on holidays, and there will be no stream. Tomorrow will be a stream. It's going to be my final office hour before the holiday at 2 p.m. UTC. I'll do an office hour or two, we'll see, where I answer all your questions, just like we did at the beginning of this stream. So join me then. And yeah, thanks again for watching. This has been a great stream. I had a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone who participated in chat, and have a great rest of your day. Until next time, take care.